Hey guys, welcome back. If you're having lunch, you have to watch this video simply because I know India is very young, its median age is 27. All of you are going to be parents at some point of time. You know, there are 10 million autistic people in India, adults and kids. There aren't many interventions. It's a problem. Some of us in schools have seen autistic kids, but our teachers, parents don't acknowledge it. To talk about it, I have the founders of Sense Kaleidoscopes with me and the investor Venkrishnan. Welcome, Anima, Akshay. How are you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming here. I didn't know. I've told you my experiences with autism is just as one kid. I didn't know it's such a serious problem, and 10 million is a very big number. Why haven't we acknowledged it so far? Is it because people want to say that okay, this never happens, and and maybe my kid will change? Is that the general perception?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things here.
Hmm.
Basically, when someone with autism comes in front of us, many times we don't even realize that they have a problem. Most other disabilities do manifest in some kind of physical way, whereas autism doesn't. So it's very easy to imagine there is nothing wrong with this child. And when the behaviors come out, when the tantrums come out, that's when people are shocked.
So when does this happen? Does it happen to young parents at some point of time?
Actually, the diagnosis is pretty good in India right now. It isn't like how it was 10 years ago. So I think doctors now are able to diagnose anywhere in between 1.5 to 3, which is how it happens globally.
Okay.
So I think the primary problem we are dealing with is social stigma. The doctors will give you a diagnosis, but as a parent, are you willing to accept that? And that's the battle we are fighting here.
So when say the doctor gives the diagnosis that this kid is autistic, the first thing the parents think is it's not coming from me. This must be something else, right?
Yes, and also to accept that something like this has happened to my child is obviously very, very difficult. Anybody initially, I think most young parents are taken aback. They don't know what autism is because the understanding around the subject of autism is very, very weak. Again, because of the stigma.
They treat us as a weakness because in India they say that okay, once a sick kid, always a sick kid.
Yeah,
We don't need that kid.
yeah. It's
Right?
not only that. Anything that is not normal, that doesn't fit the bill, it's always going to be looked upon in a very, derogatory manner. So, I mean, I'm a parent of a child with autism. The first time I heard the diagnosis, it felt like the bottom fell out of my world. I didn't know what to do. And the other thing that everyone tells you is it's lifelong. So it's not that there is a problem and there is a solution and then you're out of it. It's there day on day.
How did you deal with it as a young parent?
Well, first it was tough, but there were some indications for me to know that my child did have some difficulties, and I read a lot. So I told myself that yes, it's hard, but it's not going to be impossible. It took some strength to do that, and I'm not saying that it's easier, nor am I judging other parents who have a hard time accepting. But you have to put in that effort. If you don't do the acceptance, and the rest of the intervention will take a lot longer, and it takes a lot longer for you to see the change in your child that you want to. So acceptance has to come fast.
How did this Sense Kaleidoscopes startup happen? It's also a school,
Yeah.
right? We didn't tell you what it does. It's a school for all your parents with autistic kids. They have a program in art. It accepts people from grade 1 to 10,
Yes.
and it also accepts people who are older,
Yes.
right?
So vocational.
And a lot of you might not know an autistic person can be 30 years old, can behave like a 10-year-old too.
Yes.
I just found that out. So when did this thing start? Usually in the startup world we think about this as a 2-3-year-old company, but you've been around
Yes,
Yes,
for 7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
Talk about those early experiences.
I think for me it started off because I came back from Scotland and I was very eager to go out into the autism community and do what I want to do and make the impact that I have seen in Scotland. And I was doing small consultations in different schools, and at just a period of 3-4 months or 6 months, and then I realized that this is not working for me. And I was working with her son in one of those schools, and that's how we met.
And the school started in 2013, I'm sure,
Yes,
2013.
yes, 2013.
How many students signed up, or how did you promote it? Was it a platform like it is today?
No, initially we had just 4 students, so it came through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So basically, nobody understood at that time. It was early days, right? So no one understood the impact that art could have on a child with autism.
Okay. And these kids who came in, who've been with you for 7 years now, do you see a marked improvement?
Of course,
Absolutely.
Hmm.
like
Yes.
immense changes.
I mean, we have, just to put it very quickly, we work in the art space with kids who came to me with letters saying, this child can't hold a pencil. I showed you a couple of the paintings,
Yes.
and our artworks have gone to the Biennale, and we have also been to Paris. We are the first school in this country who's working with art, but not necessarily, and we don't work with therapy, just so it's not mistaken. We have a program, a curriculum in place that actually takes children and makes them professional artists.
Actually, it's your own curriculum, Arima?
Yes.
Yes.
And you created it for these kids?
Yes.
Yes.
And by the way, guys, autistic kids doesn't mean they're not talented. If you haven't watched the movie The Accountant, then go watch it, right? And some of them have a way of dealing with it.
Yes.
And you guys have allowed them to become great artists, and I've seen some of the artwork.
Yes.
Right? So would you encourage people to come and visit the school?
Of
Absolutely.
course. The thing that people need to remember is every individual has its strengths and weaknesses. You do, I do. So with autism, it's the same thing. So if the child has a tendency and an inclination towards arts, then we focus only on the strengths and what are their interests, what are their obsessions. So when we use their strengths and build further, we have success stories. If we only focus on what they couldn't do, we would never be able to achieve the kind of success that we have had with all these children.
Okay, and the spectrum of autism, you said different kids behave differently. Do you want to explain what that means and how parents should react accordingly?
Sure.
Don't react, but come to them, of course. But how do you define the spectrum of autism?
Yeah, the reason it's called the spectrum is because you can find a child who has very severe sensory processing issues. What I mean by sensory processing, we've got 5 senses, actually 6. And how do I function with light or sound and the ambience and all of those things, my taste, my smell, everything comes into play. Now just imagine that at all times, everything that you and me are listening to is 300 times X what I am listening as a person with autism. Along with that, everything is moving very quickly around me. Now with all this, you want me to focus and study in the classroom amongst 40 children
Sitting
or even
quietly.
20 children. It's
It
not
can be a
going to-
nightmare,
It's a
It is.
total nightmare.
and even teachers don't know how to handle it, I'm sure.
It's
Right.
not possible realistically to manage this. That's why in Scotland they created special classrooms, academic classrooms with 1:5, and they would not intermix, they would not create, the environment was controlled, which is what we need to do, because there is a need here. You have a sensory processing disorder. I have to cater to that need if I want you to pick up the other skills. So in the spectrum, you will see somebody who's very, very severe, who's just not able to function because of that. And it can also see somebody who's very, what we called as mild, but we would say high functioning. These are all terms that I'm not very happy to use, but for the lack of anything else, I'm using them to say that that's how we see the spectrum.
And Venk, you as an investor, right? I know you've invested in Stigma. We know that's a unicorn. I know you've done Pocket Aces, which is another big company. For you to invest in such a startup, I know you always wanted to do something around the social side of things.
Yeah.
What impressed you about the platform or the approach to training or teaching?
See, I wouldn't call myself an investor in this. I call myself a partner in their journey, what they went through. Because we are not looking for a return as such, right? We want to make sure that we are contributing back to society in some way. And one of the ideas I had is, some of the returns from our investments, I want to route it to causes which are there by or run by people who are really passionate about what they do, right? So it so happened that I happened to visit their school in where was it? Yalanka. And then I saw the passion with which both of them work. A child comes to them, and especially Akshay or Anima, and say, I have this problem, and they leave everything and spend time with them, with the kid, right? And one child had to sleep, and they said, go sleep, don't worry about it, because it's very difficult on a daily basis to deal with that.
Yeah, some people might just think it's attitude.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not.
It's not.
And they do a very good job of that, and I felt that this was a cause which I would like to support, because even in my own family there were people who are disabled, not autistic, and I felt that those kids have nobody to go to,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
And they find it difficult. Now the other problem which I find is what happens after they are say 50 years old. Who takes care of them? The parents can take care of them till they are. What will happen to them after that?
After
Is
they
there
pass on,
is there a way to continue this, right? Is there a way to give them a place to stay beyond? So that is something which we have been discussing. I know we are talking to other people who may support us.
Okay, and there's no endowments in India for autism?
Not for autism specifically, there is for disability, but to access these funds, it's a little tricky. It's difficult. You need to be operational for a certain number of years. You need to have certain certifications. So we do have all of the certifications that are required, but still it's an involved process. It takes time, and our needs are like urgent. It's not something that.
So how can you get these mainstream schools to tie up with you? And then they also give you an access into saying, okay, work with all the kids, because then you also have to train their siblings to handle this, right?
Correct.
Right? Do you see a play here?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the academic space primarily, where education in India has really seen a lot of changes. It's not like how it was 25 years ago. So we have alternate setups. We have setups which are doing IB curriculums. We have setups which have opened up into the creative space of teaching and learning methodologies. I think that it's with autism, yes, we have the behavior problems, yes, we have the psychological concerns that we have, and we need to make it into more smaller classrooms and bring those initiatives and put a curriculum that will work for them. I think we can kind of tie in over there, and that's what we are doing in the academic space as well. But what I told you, the cognitive delay can be corrected if we create the environment and put the right curriculum.
And the cognitive delay is what? How can it affect a kid or a parent?
For example, I have meltdowns with 21-year-olds because the electricity is gone.
They just start crying or screaming?
Yes, you can have extremely bad meltdowns where it's not just about crying and screaming. Suppose a child is watching something that he's obsessed with, like for example trains on the laptop, and the electricity goes off, and for whatever reason his laptop stops functioning. He can go out to beat you. He can go all out because he does not understand why that change has occurred. And change is something that autism doesn't take very easily as well. So imagine, now we could have fixed that problem if we had fixed the comprehension.
Okay, by the way, guys, if you've just joined us, we are talking about 10 million autistic kids and adults in India with very little interventions to change their lives. Here's Sense Kaleidoscopes changing that. But my biggest problem is this 10 million is just about the top 50 to 100 cities.
Yes.
We have a lot of these problems in rural area, which nobody has got data on, and you guys must have had some experience going out and looking for this, or are you trying anything?
We were trying, yes.
Okay, and what are the difficulties there?
I think one of the primary things that I faced was when they are going in for diagnosis, they think that the child is possessed. We're dealing with things like this.
Yes.
We're dealing with, we went to the temple and there was a speech delay, which is one of the markers that is checklisted. Yeah, but then we went to this temple and we tied these many threads, and then the child started speaking. But the child was going to speak. There was just a time delay.
That's the time, the cognitive delay.
Yeah, and it just so happened that it was taken to this. So these are the kind of things that I find very, very difficult to handle.
Yeah, I think you absolutely, between the myth of the old days, where these were all myths were used to say that there's some possession in the body or something, between science like this, is it a science that how are doctors reacting to this? Do they come and work with you? Do they send students to you?
Yes, I work closely with some doctors in demands, and we are looking at getting the curriculum researched. So yes, there is a science to it. That's how the diagnosis is happening. The early intervention techniques that are very popular as well have a science behind it. So there is a methodology. There is a proofed process which is in developed countries, and it's working very well. By
the way, guys, it's not as grim. Things are getting better, and if you only have to see the art that these kids have done, it's phenomenal. They can also get into mathematics, other subjects.
Yes.
They can. You want to tell me some experiences?
Yes. Like the autism brain is a brain that can learn. The only thing that it needs is the right environment.
Like a nourishment.
Yes, an enriched environment. Like, I don't know if you read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. So in that...
No, I've not read that, but I have heard of the author.
Yeah, so they speak about the environment. The environment has a huge role to play in how the child turns out to be. For any child, I'm not talking about autism specifically. So imagine when a child has this many needs that are not being met, as in the case of autism. And you provide an environment that meets none of those needs, yet again. So all the child is doing is trying to cope and survive. They cannot learn, they cannot thrive. There's a difference between just surviving and doing extremely well. So we are providing the environment by which these children can actually absorb and learn. Our delivery methodology is distinct. When we are making a curriculum that is all about autism, all about the children who have autism, then we tackle the problem at its very root. And that is why we get to see the results. And I'm saying more people out there can do this. I'm not saying that they can't, but we've spent years and years trying to figure out just the right approach. And that's why you see
everybody talks about AI and all that, Venk. Do you see that applying to this kind of a problem?
I think
because they eventually generate so much data about kids, right? You see a combination, it's a convergence of medicine, it's a convergence of education, and then technology, right?
I think in the long run, it's something because data is what is going to lead that. So I do think that AI can help, at least in diagnosis.
Okay, are you collecting data at this point of time?
Yeah, we are collecting data. We have extensive trackers, and you were asking me about the brain on mathematics, right? So we have this student, for instance, one of our students is brilliant, and he's a hacker. So it's not that when we say the brain can do art, it's not that it can only do art. It can do anything that it's obsessed with. So this youngster is a hacker. He had his own LinkedIn account when he was 10 years old. And stuff like that. So he's really smart. Yes. So
he works on Dropbox with me. He's also we have a curriculum which is very technology focused. So all my kids use laptops in the classroom. We have smart classrooms. That's why that is the change, the environmental change. You will not see something like that in India for kids with on the spectrum. Okay. So we have brought that in, and all our curriculum is, and they work on Google Classrooms. They do their homeworks online. So they have Facebook accounts and yes. So
and you're expanding into other cities, or it's only Bangalore, Yelahanka?
Right now we've moved to HRBR, so we're not in Yelahanka anymore.
Okay.
But right now we're only in Bangalore. So our idea is to perfect this model.
The process.
Yeah, the process and the model so that it can then be replicated.
By the way, they've self-sustained it themselves. It's not as if they've got an endowment. Did you get an endowment on this? No. Okay, that's good news. Now that Venk's here, maybe
Venk has been a huge help.
he's also going to get a business brain behind this. So you are going to other cities? Is that on the cards?
Hopefully.
No, what she said is true. We want to make sure that the model works perfectly, right? And see if we can get people like them who are passionate. People are not just looking at it to make money. Then it won't work, right? It has to be, in her case, her kid is, autistic, so she's, aware of it. So I think, I think it will, and people, we would like other people to get involved.
So come and participate. You're also a trust, so they can contribute to that trust.
Yes, definitely.
And that'll be amazing. So check them out. They're Sense Kaleidoscopes. Is there an email that they can write to you at?
Yes, sure. Either anima@sensekaleidoscopes.org or Akshay.
It's Akshay with an E.
Akshay with two E's.
With two E's. Yeah. Akshay at.
So Akshay Shetty at sensekaleidoscopes.org.
So great, guys. Thanks for coming on the show, and hope you guys check it out. It's not grim again, guys. You have world problems. This is not a problem. Go visit the school, and we'll see you all soon at 6 o'clock. Bye, guys. Bye. So you guys reading any books that you suggest to parents or?
The Neurotribes
is a book they should read.
Brilliant.
Neurotribes.
Yes, it talks about how this mind can do this amazing stuff.